Okay, here we go with part 3 of the Meng British Heavy Tank Mark V Mail. Alrighty, so I'm going to pick up right where left off at the end of part 2, which is the bulk assembly here. I have a little bit more assembly to do. I have to build all the machine guns for mounting into the hull, and then it will be working on the base, or concurrently working on the base, getting lighting in there, and then getting the thing mounted and to completion. Now, the base itself, I already already made that, so I have the videos for that. So I'll right from this, we'll go into that, and you'll get to see how I went about doing that. The base will then be covered with tile styrene sheet. If you watched my build on the Toyota MR2, you may remember this. I'm going to do basically the same exact treatment because I think that will complement well with the tank. I don't want to do anything darker because I don't want the tank to blend away into essentially the background. So that will go on. As I said, lighting will go in there, and then we'll get the whole thing set up, and hey, the cake will be baked. So one thing I wanted to point out, which I neglected to mention at the end of part 2, was mounting the tracks with these mounting posts for the hull. Now, as I said in that part, this is going to be permanently mounted. It's not going to be rolling anywhere. Besides, the tracks fit in onto the track run quite tight. So even if you wanted to roll, that would take a considerable amount of work. But I'm not doing that, so don't worry about it. Anyway, mounting the tracks around these pins, because the track basically snaps together, I just unhooked a few links. I cut out holes, as you can see, rather crudely, but once it's mounted, no one's ever going to see this again. And just started my track run, sighted around the two poles, the two mounting poles, and then ran it around the exterior, tack gluing as I went. So that's the plan, man. Yeah, so gonna get going with all that, and coming up will be the videos, as I said, for the base build. So once again, thank you for watching. I know this has been a long build, but we will be getting to the end of it in this episode. If you are not already subscribed, please do consider subscribing. And as always, like, share with your other hobby people, or people who are just interested in seeing what the inside of a tank may look like. So, that said, I will get to it. Okay, so let's talk about building the base for the tank. So you may hear some background noise, cars going back and forth. Happens to be a beautiful day, so open the garage door to do some woodwork. So first thing was deciding on the size of the base. So I found this black pressboard shelving material. That's just so I don't have to paint. This isn't like a big structural thing, so no problem with that. So this is going to be my base plate, square. Now my idea, this is the floor of our tank, is to put it at an angle. So with this blade hinge, it opens up and away, and that'll show the whole inside of the tank. So first thing was to cut a plate for that floor piece to sit on, which, as you can see, I already did. So this is just eyeball measurement. I laid out a piece of pine. Now here I'm switching the pine because I may have to do some routing and stuff, so I want to use real wood. Sighted up the floor, which allowed me to sight up the hinge. Now you notice I made two marks. That's for the top of the hinge blade. Get a little bit closer for that. That is the top of the hinge blade. And then this line is the axis of the hinge pin. Because with these blades, as they open, try to do this with one hand, you'll see if this is the length of the piece that's opening, it's going to swing into the plane of the existing piece. So I need this measurement here because I need to make sure that as this opens in a way, I'm not going to hit this plate. So I'll make a little notch cut there. Now, as to the rest of the piece, I started sketching out some lines, as you can see here, very roughly. And this will basically be a cut it as I go type deal. So there's going to be a piece here, that's where the other tread will sit on, and then it will open out like this. So I'm going to have to do some routing to conceal the depth of the hinge in this piece of pine and under the end of this board here. But first things first, going to get cutting, so I'll be back after that. Alrighty. Okay, so now that's the little notch I cut out. This is how the hinge is going to go. Of course, underneath everything, lining up on the line for the axis of the pin. And now you'll notice on this piece, I have made this line. That's the width that I am going to cut. And you see when this opens up now, using this as the guide line of the base plate, that's the end I can go to. So when I swing open, I'll have an angle about this. So with that sponson here, that will be the viewing angle into the tank, which I think is pretty good. Pretty good. So I'm going to make this cut, be right back. Okay, so I made my quick rip cut with my table saw, and now you can see perhaps a whole lot better. This will start to make sense. So this piece will lay there. Again, the hinge will be underneath everything, but that will sit there. And then when you swing this piece open, it will go through an arc somewhat like that. Okay, so I ripped my piece as I just showed. Now the next thing to figure out is, as this swings, you'll notice the top of the piece is going to pass over the lip of the base. And if I just cut straight across, which is that line, you'll see that line goes way off the edge. So what I did to figure out how I need to trim this piece, I held it at its access point and then swung the piece out, and I just mapped two lines which are the furthest reach of the piece in relation to the base. So once I make this cut, I know that when I mount it, when I swing the piece open, it will not extend over the edge of the base plate. So now to give this a little bit of symmetry, I'm going to cut this line, and on this plate I will cut this line. So there'll be a little bit of an indent there, but it'll just look like a V. The tank will be sitting here, and this will swing. And then once I get that set, I just have to work on the back end here. So I'm going to do that. Similar process, and then I'll make those two cuts. All right, be right back. All right, so I mapped that cut, need that one. Did the same thing down here as I described by just turning it and seeing where the maximum is in relation to the base. So that's how the base plate will be. The tank will sit on there. Let me get that. Okay. All right, so there's the tank base plate. So tread run on this side, tread run on this side. This is the one that's going to open. Hinge access point here. And ta-da, inside of the tank. There we go. All right, so now next thing that I have all that done, I have to go and route out a hollow for this hinge to fit in here and under here. So that is just going to be a matter of measuring the thickness of the hinge and hogging that out from this piece. And that will be the work of a router. So I'm going to do that now. Okay, so we're back after doing some routing. So here's the little notch. I didn't sand yet, that's why everything looks so rough. A little notch I took out of the corner plate, like so. Our hinge. This is the knot piece, sorry, the track run is going to sit on. So I took out that channel underneath. It's a sloppy router job, but no one's ever going to see it. So, of course, here's our hinge. So the hinge will drop in there. Away from the background so you can actually see. There you go. And once that is screwed in, basically that will sit in there. And hopefully you can see, well, black on black, but the hinge is there where my finger is. So using this reference, I can sight that up on the central axis of the hinge, and then I just have to screw stuff in place and this will open. And I just gotta say, you know, it always amazes me how just a little bit of routing, how much mess it can make. Look at that. Unreal, but a very handy tool. Okay. Okay, so here we are. Back to it. If I'm talking slower than usual, I have once again got the pleasure of experiencing COVID, so not breathing so great today, and gotta go a little slower. So I've been doing some more assembly, and we'll start off with that first. So now we have the basic half shell of the tank, floor, and the one side that will be fixed. And now this hatch becomes a little bit more evident as to why I added that. Not sure if I'm going to do that on the other track run, as that will be opening out. Speaking of which, here it is. So to get a better idea of how this is really going to shape up, the tank will fit together like so, and then swing open roughly like this. So of course the top will be on, but that gives a pretty good approximation now of where things are going. Now, of course, with the roof on and the engine carriage in there, things are going to be getting a little dark. So that means it's time to talk about lights. So there is a website. Here we go. Hope that's focused. Evan Designs, evandesigns.com. If you are building and looking to do lighting in your kit or your craft or whatever it happens that you are working with, you should check this company out because they have some really nice stuff. It's all LED, and they have it's set up specifically for doing lighting and hobby stuff. So here for this one, I have a small, this is the, which size? They come in a number of different sizes, the lights. This is a chip size, and there you go. So that's nice and tiny. And in there, that should light it up just fine. When I did the Panther, I used Pico size bulbs, which were one size smaller than these. I went a little bigger to get a little more illumination. And for this one as well, since I will not be squeezing the battery into the tank itself, I'm going to build a little accessory box on the side. I'll go with a 9-volt battery. So we'll have plenty of power for a couple of lights, and that should light up real bright inside. I figure I'm going to do one or two under the engine carriage to light that up from underneath, and then two along the roof or along the side here to illuminate the interior. So once it's on the base, that will be the plan. Speaking of the base, here we go with the base. It is now assembled after working in the garage, and this is how it will open up, like so. And there we go. So the tank will sit on there. Make a little room here. Of course, the mounting holes will be in the base. Tank will be sitting like so. And when it's closed up, like so. Okay. So it was nice to see this done, and with the work I've done on the rest of the kit, to really start to see how it's going to shape up. Obviously, I'm going to paint all that flat black in there, so it's not so obvious with the hinge. And the lighting, I will either run out in a tube to the little box I'll build over here for the battery, or I might just drill through the base, come over and drill back up and bring the wires down underneath and back up. Yeah, probably going to do that because that would be a neater solution. Now, as far as covering the raw wood here, I went and used my 1/16 tile. 1/6 inch tile styrene sheet. There we go. Got it all out. So 2 of them, because they will be cut in fashion to fit over the wood, and they will then get glued on. This does not completely cover that little corner, but I'll just cut a little extra wedge, cover that. The equipment box is going to be there for the lighting, so that will cover up anyway. And I have plenty of sheet to do the tops, the edges, the inside edges here will be black, as well as the outside ledges there. So it's just a simple matter of cut, glue it on, and that's it. So that's where we're at. Now, to do this, I spoke about this when I did the Toyota MR2. And let's see how close up of a close-up we can get. All right. Now, I'm hoping you're able to appreciate here. This starts as a white styrene sheet, and what I wanted was the effect of cobblestone. So I had experimented with this when I did the display case for the Toyota MR2 build. Just to go over that quickly, what I did here, same thing. I started out, sprayed it flat black, full saturation coat, then came back with a gray primer. A good coat, but not a full coat, because the effect I was looking for was to have different tones, like a cobblestone has different tones of gray and shadow and white. So I did the primer, which is the darker gray. I then came back with my Tamiya surface primer, which is a lighter gray, and misted that over it. And then lastly came with the white and did that very lightly. Did have a little mess on the nozzle, which caused this, but you don't necessarily have to use that piece, or more likely I'll put that where the tank is going to sit on top, so we won't really see that. But that's going to be the cover, and after that it's done. So it's a 4-step spraying, very simple to do. And as I was saying, the black full coat, the dark gray primer, a good coat, but not working to do a real saturation, because I did want the darker outlines between the tiles. And then a mist coat with the lighter gray primer to give the gray gradation and color, and then the mist of the white, very light, just to add a few highlights to it. Okay, so gonna get back to assembly. It is moving along. Definitely with this kit, as I've said before, it goes together really well, but it is a delicate kit, and not so much delicate as in fragile, but delicate in terms of, lots of small parts. And I just want to, get back to that idea and adding these retainers for the shells, little equipment. You gotta absolutely have tweezers for this kit, and you gotta be patient. Just go with it, work with it, take your time. It goes together great, but you do need to keep that in mind if you jump on this beauty of a build. So to go with that, I've also been using a number of different adhesives. I've been using my extra thin for some areas where I didn't want to do a lot of paint scraping, but I had a pretty good bonding area. This is great because I can just dab it in with a brush and it'll weld together. I've got my Testors liquid cement. This is my general purpose glue. And I also used my clear part cement basically as a filler, because I did have some gaps when I mounted the floor to the track side. So I just ran a bead of that along there that sealed it, and then I just painted it, and now no more gap. So that was a nice simple fix. And then of course, good old super glue cyanoacrylate for some of the finer parts, rather than trying to futz around with trying to scrape paint and things like that. Just a dab of that, stuck it on, done. And this is where using an airbrush can be of great advantage, because it does put down such a fine coat. The super glue, this as well, to a lesser degree, but they'll eat through the paint and the plastic can bond. When using spray cans, rattle cans, it's a significantly thicker coat of paint, and you really should be scraping then to get a good bonding surface. So that's what I've been up to. Now, since I'm grounded in quarantine for a few days, I got all sorts of hobby time. So I'm going to get back to business here, and well, maybe take a nap first. So it's just as a little bit of talking, I'm done. All right, so until the next bit of it. Okay, so let's talk about teeny tiny parts for these machine gun mounts. Now, if the camera's not completely stable, I am doing this freehand, so please bear with me. I wanted to talk about this because these 1/35th full interior kits, there are always tons of small little detail parts that you have to work with. Some more cooperative than others, some with better locations than others, some just really don't lend themselves to ease of assembly, others do. Now, in this case, we have sort of a combination of all of the above. Now, there are 4 of these guns that need to be mounted on these ball mounts into the tank. Now, to give you an idea of size, each box here is a 1/2 inch, and that's my fingertip. So, certainly not the tiniest of parts, but small things to work with. And more importantly, which I'll show you in a moment, not in the easiest places to work. Now, granted, in the instructions, they do show you building all 4 gun mounts outside of the tank, the mount meaning the ball, the machine gun, and its ammo. And then the inner ring and the outer ring come afterwards when you actually mount the gun in the tank. And the reason I wanted to take a few minutes on this is that I found, and partly due to the way I'm approaching the kit and modifications I'm making, but they may apply as well if you build it straight out of box, I had to consider how I was going to do each gun because space is an issue. So let's move right over here and take a look at the rear gun. Now you can see I have it mounted in there, and yes indeed, it is maybe a little too close. It is tiny. Now this spot actually wasn't too bad because I can reach right in there and get to it, but the ammo belt was a little tricky. Now you may have noticed on the sprue that the ammo belts are flat or straight. You do have to bend and contour them to fit in the location. Now, what I also did, if we move over to the forward mount, this one I actually clipped the belt to shorten it because, see, it's hanging down, and then this has to fit into the tank, and the driver's compartment is there, the seats, and I wanted to make sure the hanging belt would not interfere with any of that. So, had to change my approach with that. So those were 2 different approaches. And then the third different approach, what I did, and to show you on this side of the hull, I have mounted, buried in there, you can see that dark circle, that is the inner hull ring. And then from the outside, I already have the outer ring and the ball mount. And you can see that outer ring, it just fits right in there. It's a delicate little piece. So what I am going to do when it's time, I will mount the belt to the gun, shape it, and to shape it, I just used needle nose pliers and a great deal of care because these pieces are rather thin and delicate. So you don't want to bend too much because they'll just snap. Once I have the belt on the gun, then I'll just slide the gun into the mount and glue it in place. On this side, which is going to be the opening side of the hull, the way I'm building it, I didn't put it in here just to show you where that ring goes. There we go. So if you see that little circle of builder's mat behind, that's where the ball mount goes. And likewise on the outside, the outer ball mount, or the outer ring for the ball mount, drops right in there. So, fun with machine guns. Now, I'm going to stop for a moment, put the camera back on my holder arm so we get some steady photography. Okay, one moment. Okay, so camera back in its usual place. Now, I did a few slides to show how I did the lighting in the tank, but just to show you now how this looks all finished up, painted white, and you can see it basically blends away. And yes, in fact, just tapping the wires, everybody works, everybody's lit up. So I think that will look pretty good when it's all done. Now, this light will sit right beneath the transmission area here, which is see-through. I mean, it's open, so that will be lit from underneath. And this light will snake up behind the frame for the driver's seats and illuminate all under here. And as I said, the idea in the slides, the idea is to eliminate the shadow that would otherwise be created by these two lights just shining down. Now these two pieces that I used, these were actually clear roof lights from when I did the Revell Unimog. They were extra pieces. So once again, spare parts to the rescue. Always keep a hold of your spare parts because you never know when they come in handy. Underneath here, this is just some square stock. I did have to slice it open to run the lighting wire through, and then I closed it off with just a piece of strip styrene. These two will be painted black. And then going onward, we have our base, which I've talked about before. Now, these are the mounting holes I showed for putting the tank on the base. So the opening sponson will sit here, those two holes. The static part with the floor and everything will sit here. This is for that other mounting hole to give it a little stability. This is where the wires will go through, and they'll go under the base and then come up through this one. This was the first hole I drilled, but I realized, you know, I could probably do a little bit better mounting the battery more this way. There we go. And have the wires come up through there. Now flipping it over, what I did, I just used my my handy dandy, where did I leave it? Oh yes, here it is. Whoops. My Works rotary tool. I also have a Dremel, but you know, my battery was charged from using the airbrush, so I figured I'd give this another whirl, and you know, works pretty well. But Dremel, the Works, and any of these, I know there are a bunch of these different type of small rotary tools can do the trick. I just went in and I marked out lines from the hole going to the tank where the wires will come through and to the battery box, and I just ground down a channel so the wires will come through here, and then I'll make the little styrene box here. I'll scratch build that battery. The switch will be in there, and boop, we can light up the tank. So I have to paint all this black to cover up the edges. Then I will actually mount the tank on here and then finish assembling the tank on the base plate. So, which brings up the final point of this segment. When you do one of these fairly significant modifications of a kit, it is vitally important you really study your instructions, because at this point I am completely off the sequence of steps that they show. And part of what has consumed quite a bit of time with this project is planning it so that I don't end up doing something that's going to create a problem for me later on. So far that has worked out well. Yeah, it's worked out well. And you know, just like anything, do your study, do your prep work, and be sure of what you do before you do it. Way back in one of my early builds, when I talked about building the trumpeter hemp tractor, I talked in pretty good detail about adding lights to this truck. And one of the things, and I wanted to have opening doors. One of the things I mentioned in that video, because in the final build, the doors, I just left them closed, is that as you go into doing modifications or whatever you're doing with your kit outside the stated instructions, you will need an idea, if not a solid plan of what you want to do, but you also need to be very aware of your escape plan should, sorry, COVID. You also need a solid escape plan, so if your modification isn't working out or going the direction you want, you can still back out of it and not, you know, ruin the kit or make an eyesore out of something in the kit. So that's that. All right, I'm gonna get back to building. Okay, so getting to the end phase of everything here. And last thing I wanted to do, and I thought it would just be easier to talk about a little bit, was to build a display sign for the final display. So I had the video for building the battery box, for building the little road sign, and in the final reveal, get to see that a little bit clearer. But to build the sign, originally I was going to make a little placard right here on the base, but I just thought spatially it would be better to have something, just right across and centered on the front of the display board. So came time to do a little bit of engineering and went with, as usual, simple is best. So I have just a strip of styrene sheet, which I spray painted flat white already. Cut the size. Using my music wire, cut these 2 wire supports. They slip into holes that I made into the base with my hand drill. Just came in at an angle. The reason I did it that way is when this opens, there's very little tolerance past the support, and I don't want to drill in straight because then I would have probably been bulging the laminate of the base plate. So I drilled at an angle and just bent the piece. So those will be glued into place. This is just a sheet of styrene, but using some square stock, I'll give that some support. I have some styrene tube, which I'll slide over those, glued to the back of the placard, and that will go on like so. And to actually give the sign its text, I have on my handy dandy print sheets, and you can see did some experimenting, some failed experimenting on different fonts and spacing and this and that, and going to go with this for the description of the vehicle. And I pulled off of Google an archival image of 2 Mark V's sitting parked at the front during the war. I sized those images and the text so everything will fit on here. So once everything is done, that will go on there and mount, and that will most likely be it. So I'm going to put that together, and as before with the signpost and the battery bots, it's just a matter of cutting the styrene stock pieces to size, assembling them. It's really nothing complicated, simple stuff. I will most likely use some of my stinky epoxy again to secure the wires to the base. It is very odorous, but it works very well, epoxy being what it is. Okay, so I'm going to get to that. And when this is done, at long last, final build reveal. Alrighty. Okay, here we go. It is final build reveal time for the British Heavy Tank Mark V male from Meng Models. And before I even show it, I will just say thank you for bearing along with me on this build, because I know it took me a long time to get this one done. I had a long break in between where my interests went elsewhere, and I was working on other builds and did other build videos and whatnot. But at long last, it's here and it's done, and I'm happy with it. So let's take a look at the final product. Okay, and there we go. Now, a lot of this you've seen in bits and pieces in the background of the videos leading up to the final completion of the kit, but here it is, officially done. So don't misconstrue it. Oh, I chipped my base. All right, I'll have to fix that. So don't misconstrue what I said. I really enjoyed the build. I'm really happy with the way it came out in terms of being able to realize what I had originally planned to do in terms of the presentation. The only reason I hedged a bit is because of me, in that seeing how it is all done, there were a few things I would have liked to do a little bit differently, and I'll start off with that to get that out of the way. So to start with the presentation base. So here it is all done. Obviously, you know, I did it square, so it's 9 3/4 by 9 3/4. And right there is the first thing I would have preferred to do different. I would have liked to do it rectangular, because I think another 2 or 3 inches over on this side would have given the tank, would have provided the tank more of a central stage on the display. The detail work to do the battery and switch, that would have been a little more visible. Perhaps I could have done a little bit more in terms of presentation with some sandbags or something like that, but I did this and then didn't want it to be cluttered, so I didn't want to add anything else. So you know, I added the sign up here to sort of a feng shui my display, but didn't quite feng it enough. So you know, would have gone for a rectangular base. A little bit of extra room, I think, could have made an appreciable difference on how it looks when it's all done, in terms of giving the tank more of a central position, as I said. But too late now, and I wasn't about to go and cut and add a you know, a really nasty looking seam, or remove the tank from the base because it's epoxied in there. So whatever, it's done. That's the way it is. So as I said, that all that being you know, noted, I'm still happy with the way it came out, but I think I could have done a little bit better. Now, in terms of the plan for the display, the hinged base, the opening up of the tank, the lighting, the switch box, you know, basically went according to plan, and I'm very happy that that plan worked out as well as it did. I did quite a bit of planning when I did the Panther G from Ryefield with the cutaway hull, but on that, basically a lot of my work was done for me because the kit came with the cutaway hull. On this, that all had to be engineered to show off the interior. It didn't take a lot of work in terms of modifying the kit as much as it did really exercising and gaining an awareness for how everything fits in there, so that the display would look good when it's opened up. And don't worry, I will open it up, but I will have to stop the camera to get in there and do everything. So to give you a little bit of an inside look, of course, in here, this hides the 9-volt battery and the switch. Okay, sorry, I had a little technical gaffe with my camera, so excuse the rough edit, but yes, just have to reach in here to turn on the switch. There we go. Now we have some lighting in there, and we will see that glow as it comes around. But like I said, I did want that all covered up. I didn't want an exposed switch anywhere. Also, I added the sign that was not part of the original plan, but again, because the tank is shifted that way, it's not central in the base, I didn't want just a blank empty area here, so I did the sign. I went ahead and did the ballast. That is Woodland Scenics medium ballast in cinders. So just to give a little texture and add a little something, I have the sign, and I mentioned in immediately prior to this, I changed the design for this because it was going to be here, and again, I wanted something visually to move central, and it did give me more range to put some technical information on there. As it comes, you know, as it's going around, you see I have the engine horsepower, the length of the tank, its operational range, tonnage, and then the armament, because I will be, again, my long-term plan is to have one big display base with this and a US Grand tank, and then a Tiger tank, all with full interior, you know, lit up, similar idea as this, and have, you know, evolution of armored warfare, something like that. So do want the technical data there to highlight the difference between the vehicles as time had progressed. So now I'm going to take a quick pause and reach in there. You'll notice this black peg here. I did add that because after I put the sign in, I realized it's really hard to get in and reach the base to swing it open. So I'm going to cover the battery box and we'll let it come around. Now, obviously, it's not weathered. It's not beaten up and rusted because I intended this to be a museum display. And if you see the Mark V's that actually are in museums, they are pristine like this. They are not rusty and beaten up. I did do the dark brown base coat with the lighter brown overcoat to add some shadow and definition around the rivets. It is impossible to catch that on the camera. It is there. It is subtle. So would have liked a little more of that. I did go back with black wash to add some more detail in there. So there is slight, because in areas like this, the adjustment bearings for the front sprockets, things like that, always seep oil and grease. So I just figured I'll leave it there. So I'm going to stop the turntable now, and we'll open the base up using the handy peg, and it just swings open like so. And now you see why I did the ballast the way I did. I have a few loose pieces of ballast still falling off, and we will skip the rotation and just position it so you can see in there. In fact, I'm going to bring this close. Now, all that lovely detail in there. Very happy with the way that came out. I also engineered the hatches so we can open up the hatches and get some ambient light in there to help highlight the detailing like so. And with all that, we'll resume the spin and we get to see more of the tank. So yes, these things I went and did extra designing the hatch hinges, this hinge, you know, the opening hull. Again, not major engineering things to do, and just took a little time, but they worked out just fine. And really, they're not complicated, intricate things to do. They just take some patience and, you know, trial and error, this and that, looking at what you need to do, engaging from there, which probably isn't the best explanation, but you know, I find these things very difficult to do live on camera, so that's why I did it through JPEGs and you know, after videos to discuss it. I also had to make some decisions. The upper frame rail here comes down. This is the inner adjustment bearing for the sprocket, and this joins to the outer sponson. Of course, when it opens, that has to separate. So after debating back and forth what to do, fortunately, because the molding quality on the kit was so good, so excellent work, Meng models, the piece is not warped. It is completely true. So when I attached it to the roof of the tank, that plate was right up against the sponson, because my fear was that there would be a big gap and I'd have to try to bend the piece and reshape it. All unnecessary. So all I did, I figured in the end, as usual, simple is best. I just took some flat black, you know, the black hole of detail or lack thereof, and I painted the inside of that adjustment flat black, and then the corresponding spot on the track run, and as it comes around, we will see that. So it has been, as I said, a long build, but you know, what a beautiful kit. I can't recommend this highly enough. And one of the things that really impressed me with this kit is the fact that if you build this out of box without doing all of this that I did, if you just wanted the experience of building the tank and appreciating the detail, learning what was inside the thing, and having that, you can do that, and you can build a kit, and you'll have a wonderful experience. Of course, the detail will be hidden when you join the whole tank hull together, but you can make modifications to see that as you choose. The top armor plate, you could actually join the tank hull, glue that all together, but not glue the top plate on and just have that removable. It may not sit quite as nicely as what I did here because it does hook under the track runs. So you'll have to take down the sides a little bit, but that is another option. And that's the last point I want to make, because then I'm going to take the camera off and try to get a little bit closer in there. But the sign sometimes of a really well designed, engineered, and manufactured kit is that it is so true in its assembly that it makes it very easy for you to go and start doing modifications and re-engineering things and trying different additions and things like that, because when it comes time to go back to the intended assembly, things are going to go together. So as long as you study your instructions, you do your test fitting, you study the kit, see how it goes together, your back is covered, so to speak, in terms of how it will assemble. And as I've said or hinted at various stages of this, I did spend a lot of time during this build just piecing the major tank components together, the two track runs, the floor, the insides, the roof, just to appreciate where all these contact points are, how well they fit, what's going to be seen, what's not going to be seen, where the red cut line that I painted here will be visible or not. I discontinued the line in the front here because that was going to be visible when I closed the track run, and I didn't want that, so I left it off. So these are all things that you need to figure out as you go along. And some of the things I did mention originally in the build, that I was going to have this gun assembly on a swing out hinge. I dropped that idea because it would have required quite a bit of modification in here, and I did not want that mess, so to speak, being there, because that's a highly visible area. And since it's highly visible, there was no need to have the gun emplacement swing out. You can see it well enough from there, and adding this hatch here, you can see inside on this one, plus the way the lighting wound up being positioned, this is lit, and if you were to close the tank and look through the hatches, you can see in there. So I will close it up just to show you how it looks. So lit up, you still get the idea of the glow in there, even if we close the hatches. Of course, the tank is under bright light for the filming, but you can appreciate that light in there. And what I like about this is it does allow you, with the lights on, to get a view inside there and see a little bit of what is going on. Okay, so I'm going to stop the camera for a minute, take it off the mount, and then see if I can get a little bit of a closer view in there. Okay, so one moment, be right back. Okay, so here we go in freehand mode here, so you'll have to excuse if it's a little jiggly or blurred. I am trying to do this here, but here we go with a better look into the interior with it all lit up, and into the other track run. Please ignore my messy basement in the background. Looking through the front hatch, you can see one of the lights in there. It does give you, with these hatches, the ability to look in there from all different angles and appreciate different parts of the tank, which I'm happy to say was exactly the point that I went and did these things, so that you could see all of that in there. And like I said, pretty happy with the way that all worked out. So there we go. And bring it around once more. So I think it's nice that I could display the tank like this, lit, unlit, with the open hull. That there is quite a bit of light going in there because of the way it opens up, and especially if the hatches are open. But of course, the LEDs give that cool effect in there. And you know, even with the tank closed up, you can then look in there and see things. So I'm going to stop, close it up, and look through that. All right, so now I closed the track run, and now we're looking through that top roof hatch. And with the LED, you can see, you know, a lot of detail in there all lit up, which is pretty nice. And as we spin it around, get some of that nice engine detail in there. And if we flip open the sponson hatch, we can look in there as well. So neat stuff, neat stuff. All right, I'm gonna stop and go back onto the camera mount. Okay, so here we go. Now that it's all done, showed you the inside, the outside, talked about all the different points. So what's my final impression of this build? Well, as I said, it's just, it's a fantastic kit. It was a great building experience. You know, these interior detail build kits, they do take time and, you know, commitment, because there's a lot involved. But boy, you know, they're an experience. And when you're done with something, you really have something special on your shelf, because you'll look at it and you'll know what you put into it, and it is well-deserved satisfaction, let's say that. So, and I'm pretty satisfied with the way, I'm very satisfied with the way this came out. So, and of course, doing the extra little detail work, you know, it just adds to it. But as I've said in other builds, you know, I tend to find that the better my experience with a kit, the more inclined I am to start doing extra things, because, you know, there's nothing I feel that's pulling me backwards on it. It's just, oh, this is going great, you know, I could do this, I could do that. So it's just the overall positivity of the experience. Plus, with something like this in particular, because there is a lot to it, you know, I just don't want the tank sitting on a shelf. I want to have a little bit something more to display it. And as I've discussed now several times, I have plans for, you know, doing a bigger display with some of these interior detail kits, which I have yet to build, but we'll get to. So anyway, that is the end of it. So as always, hope you enjoyed the video, hope you enjoyed the build. And again, thank you for sticking with me through this. I know it was a long haul to get to the finish here, but here it is. And I feel, at least as the person who built it, I feel it was worth it. So I will just close by saying, you know, please do consider all that good YouTube stuff, like, share. You know, I really do appreciate that. It does encourage me. And, you know, the whole point of this is to show people who are getting into the hobby, or who are, you know, come back to the hobby, the things that are out there and the things you can do. And, you know, until I came back in, I didn't even know these interior detail kits existed. And, you know, I'm glad I found them, because boy, oh boy, they are something else, as I just said. So that will be that. Now, after doing something big, I'm going to move to something a little simpler, but you'll just have to wait till the next build video to see what that is. Okay, so until then, enjoy your hobby, and thank you for watching. So I'm just going to let this finish its spin, as I normally do. Take a moment to reflect and just soak in the experience of building this thing. So, moments are brief, moments are fleeting. Remember to enjoy your moments. See that? I snuck in a lecture for the day. All right, that's all. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.